according to research, people suffer bouts of depression most often in the winter months. When you think about it, our bodies really crave that sunshine and the warmth of summer and spring and fall even. But those winter months, but especially after the hub of Christmas is over with, those are the times that probably I would say mostly January and February that you really are affected by that longing for summer. A lot of people even are diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder where they really need that sunshine. It really affects them. Some other terms that come to mind for it, of course, cabin fever. We get cabin fever because we're wanting to be out in the fresh air, and it's hard to do that when it's cold and snowy outside. Some other ones that I've heard, sad and down and out, in the doldrums, down in the dumps. You just have the blahs, had the mopes, can't help it. A bad case of the miseries. I always liked that one, a bad case of the miseries. And that one might mean that you're kind of achy and stuff, or you're kind of sick, or it could just mean that you're depressed, that you're down and out. You might hear someone say, "Why are you moping around with that long face?" One of my favorite sayings like that come from one of my blind pig readers, Don Byers. He calls it having the mule lip. If you've got the mule lip, it means you're down and out. I guess you've got your lip run out. That's another way of saying that's more somebody's pouting than actually being depressed. But one of the most interesting words to describe this, that kind of depression that happens in February and even January, but mostly in February for a lot of people, is they have the mullygrubs, also sometimes called the mullygrubs. Now, mullygrubs is not a word that I grew up knowing anything about, and I was first introduced to it though by my good friend Jim Cassida. He often talks about his grandfather Joe, about him talking, Grandpa Joe, he would talk about having the mullygrubs, and most of the time it was in February. It was too cold for him to get out and about. All the festivities of the holidays was over with, all that good eating, but it was still a ways till you knew that you could get out and get in the garden or go fishing or all those kind of things. Jim said his grandpa staunchly maintained that the reason February was the shortest month was that a body couldn't abide it if it was any longer. So that was his outlook. So Grandpa Joe obviously really suffered from having the mullygrubs come February. Another one that I was recently introduced to by Dean Rathbone, one of my online friends. He writes beautiful stories about his mother and his family, but his mother shares a lot with him. And recently she had shared one with him that he wasn't familiar with, so then he wrote about it, and so then that taught it to me. And he's from Western North Carolina too. So his mother had told him if they could just get through the worry months, they'd be all right. And he said, "Well, what is the worry months, Mother?" So this is what she said. She said, "When I was a little girl back in the 1930s, the old people would call January and February the worry months. They both end in worry for a reason, Never thought about that. January and February. That's about how we say them here in the mountains." And then she went on to say, if the growing season the year before had been bad, you worried about whether ye had enough food to put up to get by. If it had been frosted late in the spring the year before, then the berry and apple crops were scarce. We canned and dried anything that we could, but if there wasn't enough to gather, you worried about having enough to get you through the winter. The weather always got worse in January and February. You worried about having enough feed for the livestock, or if it snowed, how would you get out to feed them or water them? Nobody had electricity back then, so you heated with fireplace. If the temperature dropped below zero, the water froze in the water buckets and your canned goods froze and broke. That was a big loss. So you can certainly tell in those days why Dean's mother, why it was common knowledge that February and January were the worry months. She goes on to tell Dean also about it was also the worry months because those are the time of the year when you think about the cold and especially maybe if you were hungry, unfortunately, if something like that was going on. But those are the months that sickness seemed to always come. Even now today, the winter is when we, typically you think about colds and flus and stuff. So that was a really interesting one. Those were the worry months. So they had an obvious reason in those days to have the mullygrubs. But we do too today. Like I said, some people is just affected by the weather causes you to have them. Once Jim had introduced me to that word though, the mullygrubs, I decided to do some research about it. So in the free dictionary online I found it had and it's also, there's variant forms of it. So the mullygrubs, I think I said that one, but even the mollygrunt and the grums instead of grubs. So anyway, the free dictionary had this entry for it: to feel depressed. She had the mullygrubs because her husband was out of town. Joe had the mullygrubs. We tried to cheer him up. Dictionary.com has this entry: ill temper, colic, grumpiness, and it notes that it's most often used in the southern U.S. And the origin, has it dating back to 1590 to 1600, so very old. Merriam-Webster had mullygrubs: despondent, sullen, or ill-tempered mood, sulks, or blues. The T for Translation website has a real interesting post about the word mullygrubs. Kind of talks about the history, talks about how the usage has fallen out of fashion mostly in the United States, but that it is still widely used in Australia. So if you're from Australia, you'll have to tell us that if it's still used in your area. I also shared a few different quotes of it being used in past writings. So one of them was: idleness lies in bed, sick of the mullygrubs, where industry finds health and wealth. And that was Brave Men and Women by O.E. Fuller. As for myself, while I have scarce stirred to take exercise for 4 or 5 days, no wonder I had the mullygrubs. And that was from the Journal of Sir Walter Scott by Sir Walter Scott. So interesting. So both those quotes are kind of saying the cure for the mullygrubs is to get out and about and get some exercise. But like Grandpa Joe was saying, in his situation, February is not the month. If there's snow and ice and all that, it's kind of hard to get out and get some exercise. Of course, I'd have to look in my dictionary of Smoky Mountain English, and it does have an entry for it. So the mullygrubs, variant form is mullygrubs: ill temper, sulkiness, despondency, vague unwellness. 1913 Capehart, our Southern Highlanders: I knowed in reason she'd have the mullygrubs over them doin's. So something had went on that made her sad. 1943 Justice Bluebird: it was no use, she knew, trying to reason with her brother when he was having a spell of the mullygrubs. 1982 Paris: here's how: to have the mullygrubs is to be upset or displeased. And then 1995, the Montgomery collection: it was known to Cardwell and Jones. So very interesting. And then there is one more citation, 1990, Cavender Folk Medicine. In that book, it's actually the mullygrubs meant your stomach was growling or you were having hunger pains. So that's interesting. That kind of goes back to Dean Rathbone's mother talking about those months being the worry months. So I've been fortunate in my life that I've not suffered with the mullygrubs much. Of course, I've had sadness in my life. We all do. But I've not been someone that really suffers with being down and out, although I've certainly been around people who do, and my heart goes out to them, people that struggle with that. I am a lover of the melancholy, though. You probably already knew that about me if you've been watching my channel. I love the old stories, and I love especially the old melancholy songs that really tear at your heart, touch your heart. I've been working on a video for you about one of those songs, so hopefully I'll be able to share that with you soon, that I've really enjoyed. Although it's made me cry 2 or 3 times, I just really enjoyed it. So this time of the year, I'm not necessarily one, like I said, that suffers from that, but any time of the year, my mind does go to those songs that really make you kind of feel lonesome. I need to do a video about feeling lonesome. That's another good way to say that, but that's different really than having the mullygrubs. But before I leave you, I'm going to share one of those old songs with you that really get to the heart, I think, of having the mullygrubs. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope that you'll leave me a comment and let me know if you're familiar with that word mullygrubs. And if you're not, what do you call being down and out? Are you someone that suffers from being down and out sometimes, especially in January and February?